All right, this review is going to get you ready for Unit Test 5. The first question asks me for the amplitude. The amplitude is always going to be, when you're looking at an equation, the coefficient out front. But because amplitude is the distance from the axis of wave to the top, and it's a distance from the axis of wave to the bottom, it can never be negative. So anytime they ask you for the amplitude, it's going to be the coefficient in front of the word, but it cannot be a negative. So if you look at letter A, they want to know what is the amplitude. The amplitude for 6 sine 1/2 x is 6. B, y equals -2 cosine x. The -2 is out front, but again, amplitude is a distance, so your amplitude is just 2. Letter C, there's a -3 out front, but again, amplitude is distance, so we're going to put 3. On letter D, there's nothing out front. So we know after years of algebra and algebra 2, there's nothing out front. There's really an imaginary 1. So the amplitude there is 1. Question number 2 wants me to find the period for each function. Well, the period is always going to be equal, when you're looking at an equation, to 2 pi divided by the b. And the b is going to be located right in front of the x. So to find the period here, I'm going to say 2 pi divided by 1/2. So we know how to divide fractions by now. It's 2 pi times 2 over 1. If I multiply those across, we're going to find out that my period is 4 pi. Letter B, again, your period is going to equal 2 pi divided by the b. The b is 5. That can't be reduced, so your answer is just 2 pi over 5. Letter C, we're going to have 2 pi divided by b. Since there isn't a number in front of x, we know again from Algebra 1, Algebra 2 that there's an imaginary 1 there. So 2 pi divided by 1 is 2 pi. Letter D, the period is equal to 2 pi divided by b, and my b is 6. This does reduce, so we get pi over 3. On number 3, they want me to write an equation of that's a sentence, but it should be sine function that has a given characteristics. So they give me the amplitude and they give me the period, and they want me to write the equation. When they want you to write the equation, we always know that our amplitude is going to go first, and then we're going to have the word sine, and then what I need is the b, which is our frequency. They didn't give me the b, they gave me the period. Well, to find the b, you're going to do 2 pi divided by the period. So these formulas are very, very similar. So I'm going to have y equals, the amplitude is 7. They want me to write a sine function. The period is 4 pi. So to find the b, I'm going to have 2 pi divided by 4 pi. My pi's will cancel, and I'm left with 1/2, and then I just put an x on it. There was no horizontal or vertical shift, so we're done. We're going to follow the exact same steps over here. Your amplitude goes out front, and then the word sine. To find the b, we're going to do 2 pi divided by the period. The period is 6, so 2 pi over 6, and that reduces to pi over 3. So we're going to have pi over 3, and then an x. There's no horizontal shift, there's no vertical shift, so we're done. Number 4 is asking you about a phase shift, and you need to know when you see the phrase phase shift, that means is there a horizontal shift left and right? If so, which direction and by how much? So this particular equation, 2 sine x minus pi over 4. The pi over 4 is in the parentheses, so we're going to do the opposite of what it says, and this will be my phase shift. So it says minus pi over 4, which means my graph is going to shift to the right, pi over 4 units. Because remember, it always says the opposite. Over here for the cosine function, again, I'm just focused on what's on the inside of the parentheses, and I'm going to do the opposite of what it says. It says plus pi, so I know if it says plus pi, I'm really going to go left pi units. Okay, the next 2 problems we're going to focus on are the Ferris wheel problems. For these particular problems on the test, they're going to ask you for everything that I asked you on the assessment, nothing different. They're going to ask you for your maximum, your minimum, your amplitude, your axis of wave, the period, the frequency. They're going to ask you the graph, and they're going to ask you to write an equation. They're going to ask you for all of those things. Okay, so this first Ferris wheel problem, they told me the Ferris wheel has a diameter of 105 feet and is 3 feet off the ground. So a little picture would be, here's my Ferris wheel. I know it's 3 feet off the ground, and then I know the distance from the top of the Ferris wheel to the bottom is 105. So that already, that picture right there is going to tell me my max and my min. So my max would be a 105 plus 3, which is 108. My minimum is going to be the 3 feet off the ground. If you have your max and your min, you should be able to find your axis of wave, and you should be able to find your amplitude. So to find your amplitude, you're going to do the max minus the min divided by 2. To find your K, you're going to do the max plus the min divided by 2. So 108 minus 3 divided by 2 would be 105 over 2. It's okay to have a decimal. So 2 will go into 10 5 times. 2 will go into 5 2 times. So it's going to be 52.5. Let's see. 52.5 plus 52.5. Yep, that's going to add up to 105. Now I'm going to subtract them. So 108. I'm going to add them plus 3 divided by 2. So 108 plus 3 would be 111 divided by 2. So 2 will go into 11 5 times. And then that's going to be another 11, so it's going to be 55.5. Okay, they also want me to find my period, which is my T, and my axis of wave, and my frequency, which is my B. So they tell me in the problem that it completes 1 revolution every 24 seconds. So my period is 24 seconds. And then my frequency is going to be 2 pi over 24, which is going to reduce to pi over 12. Okay, so this is all the information they're going to ask you to go do, and you have to know these two formulas. You need to know that your axis of wave, you're going to subtract these two and divide by 2. For your K value, you're going to add these two and divide them by 2. They're going to ask you to go graph it. When you graph it, make sure you go out to as long as your period, which is 24. You're going to half it, half it, half it. You need to have these labeled, and these are all in seconds, just like on our assessment. We need to have our K value in here. So I'm going to have my K value at 55.5. My maximum is going to be up here at 108, and my minimum is going to be down here at 3. We're going to dash in my axis of wave. Because I'm getting on a Ferris wheel, you don't get on at the top of the Ferris wheel, you don't get on the middle of the Ferris wheel, you get down here at the bottom of the Ferris wheel. Then we're going to continue to go up until I get to the top, until I get back down. So by looking at this picture, we can see that this is a negative cosine. Because it's a negative cosine, my negative out front, my amplitude is 52.5. That still goes first. We said it was a negative cosine, so I write the word cosine. Our B value goes next. My B is pi over 12. We're talking about time. I did not have a horizontal shift, but I did have a vertical shift. My K value is what goes at the end, 55.5. Okay, so what I would do is I would pause the video, go try letter B, see if you can get it right, come back and check it, and then ask me questions if you have any. Okay, so you're coming back hopefully by now. A Ferris wheel has a radius of 25 feet and is built 8 feet off the ground. If the radius is 25, that means my diameter is 50. So the whole thing, the whole circle is 50, and it's 8 feet off the ground. So I have a max of 58, and I have a minimum of 8. We're going to do our amplitude and our axis of wave again. Remember, for amplitude, we're going to subtract these two. So 58, take away 8 is 50, and 50 divided by 2 is 25. To get your K value, you're going to go add these. 58 plus 8 is 66. Let's make sure 8 plus 8 is 16, right? Yep. And if I divide that by 2, I get 33. Let's go see the period and the frequency. So it says that it makes 1 complete revolution every 20 seconds. So my period is 20, which means my frequency is 2 pi over 20, which is pi over 10. I'm going to go sketch the graph. We go out to the period. Again, the period was 20. Half of 20 is 10. Half of that is 5, which makes that 15. My axis of wave is 33. And then I'm going to go up to 58 and down to 8. Again, we're getting on a Ferris wheel, so I start at the bottom and I work my way up around the Ferris wheel. So this is another negative cosine. So h equals negative. I put my amplitude next. The word cosine. I'm going to go put my b. And then I'm going to add to it my k value. Okay, hopefully by now you're getting really, really good at these. So a majority of the test will be matching equations and graphs. So I'm going to focus on some testing strategies for that. So when you're doing this section down here, the first thing you need to decide is, do you think it's a sine curve or do you think it's a cosine curve? Remember, cosine curves either start at the max or the min, and sine curves start at your axis of wave. So because I'm looking at my y-axis right here, and on the y-axis it starts at a max, I'm going to say it has to be a cosine graph. So it can't be this one and it can't be this one. So I have two choices left. It's either 2 cosine 3x or 2 cosine 2 pi over 3. In order to figure this out, I can already tell that they both have the same amplitude of 2, which means this must be my axis of wave. The only difference between these two equations is this number right here, and that's my b. Remember, to find your b, it's 2 pi over the period. And you can find your period from the graph. Remember, your period is how long it takes your graph to get back to where it started. So we're way up here at the 2, back to the axis, down here at the negative 2, back to the axis, and we're back to where we started, right here. This is back to where I started. So that tells me that my period is 2 pi over 3. So the b is equal to 2 pi divided by 2 pi over 3. So we're going to do our fraction thing. So 2 pi times 3 over 2 pi. My 2 pi's will cancel. That means my b is equal to 3, which means this has to be the answer. Okay, so let's go through the strategy again. So on this particular graph, it starts on the y-axis again, and it doesn't start at the top, it actually starts at the bottom. So I know it's a cosine because it started at the bottom. I know it's a negative cosine. So it can't be this one and it can't be this one. The only difference between these two, again, is the letter b. So if I can find the period, then I can use my equation to find the b. Remember, your period is when you get back to where you started. So negative 2, axis, positive 2, axis, negative 2. Okay, so this right here makes one complete cycle. And it took me pi to do it. That means my period is pi. To find b, it's 2 pi over pi, which is 2. The answer is 3. This graph doesn't start at the top, it doesn't start at the bottom, it starts right here in the middle. That's your axis of wave. Because it starts in the middle, it's a sine graph. Sine, 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 sine. I can't get rid of any of them. I can look at my amplitudes. Remember, your amplitude is how high you go from the axis of wave and how low you go from the axis of wave. So my axis of wave is right here at 0, and it looks like I went up a half and down a half. So that means that my amplitude is 1/2. So it can't be this one, and it can't be this one. Now, once again, the only difference between these two graphs, equations, is the b. So I need to figure out the period. And once I figure out the period, I can plug into my formula. So it goes axis, maximum, axis, minimum, axis. Okay, that's how long it took me. So it took me pi. So my period is pi. B is equal to 2 pi over pi. So my b is equal to 2. That's my answer. Okay, so let's go do some more of these. On the back, we're starting right here at the 0. So I know it can't be cosine because cosine would have started at +2 or -2. Oh, none of these are cosine. I see that from my axis of wave, let's put it down the middle, is 0, that I actually went down first, and I went down 2. Because I went down first, I know it's got to be a negative, and then my amplitude is -2. This does not have an amplitude of -2. This has a -1. This has a -2. This one's positive. I'm done. I don't have to do any more work once I've figured out that it was a -2 amplitude. All right, let's go look at the next one. This looks like it's also a sine curve because it starts right here at 0, 0. It goes up to 3 and down to -3. So now my amplitude is a +3 because I went up first. So it can't be this one. It can't be this one. Again, the only difference between these two are the b's. So I need to go find my period, and then I will go use my formula to find the b. So axis, maximum, axis, minimum, axis. Okay, means t is equal to pi, and b is equal to 2 pi over pi, which is 2, so that's my answer. All right, F's a little different. If you'll notice, on F, I'm not starting anywhere. I'm not starting at the highest point. I'm not starting at the lowest point. I really can't tell where I'm starting because I don't have an axis of wave that's drawn in here for me, so I have to figure that out. So I remember that my axis of wave is the maximum plus the minimum. So the maximum value up here is 8. The minimum value is 2. 8 plus 2 is 10, and 10 divided by 2 is 5. So I know that I have an axis of wave right here at 5. Okay, that already helps me out right there because that means I need an equation that has a +5. So I know it can't be this one, and I know it can't be this one. I've got 2 choices left. Then what I can do is now I can look at this and go, oh wait, I actually did start at the lowest point. And if I start at the lowest point, not the highest point, not the axis of wave, it's a negative cosine. Well, the only one left that has a negative cosine is that one. Okay, this one is the same type of problem. So we need to find our max and our min so I can find my axis of wave. So it looks like my max is at 2, my minimum's at 0. So 2 over 2 is 1. So I have an axis of wave right here at the 1. That means I need a +1, +1, +1, +1, +1. Everybody had a +1. That didn't help me. Okay, it looks like I went from here, I went from 1 to 2, and then I went from 1 to 0, which means my amplitude was only 1. So this can't be it, and this can't be it, because those have an amplitude of 2. So now the only difference between these two equations is this one has a 1/2, and this one has an imaginary 1. So just like we've done the whole time, we're going to go find our period. So axis, maximum, axis, minimum, axis. And it looks like I finished at 4 pi. So 2 pi divided by 4 pi, pi's cancel, is equal to 1/2. So that has to be my answer. On 7, A through D, I give you the graph, and I'm trying to see if you can write the equation all by yourself. So there's no multiple choice on these. I just want to see what you can do. So anytime you're doing these, remember the first thing we want to do is figure out, is it a sine or a cosine? So here's my y-axis. And I can tell that it starts at the top. So that means it's a positive cosine. And it actually goes all the way up to 4 and all the way down to -4. So now my amplitude is 4. Then I just have to figure out what the b is. Remember, to find the b, I have to find the period first. So maximum, axis, minimum, axis, maximum. If this is 2 pi, this looks like it's pi. Okay, so I've got 2 pi over pi, so I'm going to say my b is 2. We're going to try the same thing over here. You'll notice this time I don't start at the max or the min, I start at the axis and go up, so it's a positive sign. I go all the way up to 4, so y equals 4 sine. Again, we got to go find our b. So axis, maximum, axis, minimum, axis. It looks like I'm at pi again. Hopefully you're going to work smarter, not harder, and you're going to say, hey, that was the same number, so it's 2 again. Let's go look at C. So on C, I can see that I'm starting down here at a minimum, and then I went up to a maximum, and then I went over here back to the axis. So minimum, axis, maximum, axis, and the minimum would have been right over here. Okay, so this one, or I could have went here, axis, maximum, axis, minimum, axis. I don't know if I messed up on this one or not when I did it. Okay, let's just keep going. Let's see, it looks like a minimum, and it looks like it's going at -3, so -3 cosine. I need to find the b. So this is 2 pi, 4 pi, so x, and then this we can change. It looks like it's going to finish at 4 pi. Got to get back down here. I really can't tell what it's going to be. I'm going to say it's probably going to be 5 pi, but I'm really not sure. So we're just going to pretend this is 5 pi right now. So that would give you my period. So 2 pi over 5 pi would give me 2/5 x. This isn't a really good one. This one doesn't look very good either. Okay, I think what I'm going to do is, this one started at the axis maximum. This one's going to be a sine curve, and it goes up to 2, and it looks like it's going to get over here at 4 pi, because it went 2 pi this way. So the period is 4 pi. So the frequency is 2 pi over 4 pi, which was 1/2 x. Okay, so I'm still not feeling really good about this one, so let me look at this one more time. Actually, it might be 6 pi. Don't worry too much about this one. Obviously, I did not pick a good graph. All right, so this section is exactly the same stuff. You're going to look at these and decide if it's sine, if it's cosine, and you're going to practice writing equations. So good time to pause the video and come back and check your answers. This one starts at a max, so it's going to be a cosine. It goes up to 2, so this is 2 cosine. Maximum axis, minimum axis, max. The period was 4 pi. That means the b is going to be 2 pi over 4 pi, which is 1/2 x. This one starts at the middle of the graph, the axis of wave, and then goes up, and it goes up to 2, so this is going to be a sine graph, and it goes axis, maximum, minimum, axis, back to axis at 4 pi. So the period's 4 pi again. So I already know if I take 2 pi and divide it by 4 pi, I'm going to get 1/2 x. I've done that several times today. This one started at the bottom, so that means it's a negative cosine. It's a -2 cosine. Again, it ends at 4 pi, so it's also a 1/2 x. Oh, if I put my y equals. All right, this one goes from the axis and down, and it goes down to -2. So this is a -2 sine, axis, minimum, axis. And this also ends at 4 pi, just like this one did, so we already know this is also a 1/2 x. Letter E starts at the top, up at +2, so it's a +2 cosine, but I don't end at 4 pi, I end at 4. So this time my period is 4, so 2 pi divided by 4 is going to be pi over 2x. So really the only difference between this period and this one down here is this one had a pi left in it. Let's go look at the next one. I start at the middle and then go up 2, so it's y equals 2 sine, because I started at the middle, it's a sine, it went up, so it's positive. It also ends at the 4. We just talked about that one, so I know this is pi over 2x. All right, the next one starts at the bottom at -2, so I know it's a negative cosine. It ends at the 4 also, so again, it's pi over 2x. All right, this one starts at the axis of wave and goes down to -3. So this is -3 sine, and it ends at pi. So 2 pi over pi is 2x. This one starts at the top at 3, so y equals 3 cosine. Let's see, maximum axis minimum ends at the pi, so 2 pi divided by pi, again, is 2x. Letter G starts at a positive 5, so y equals 5 cosine. It looks like it ends at the 8, so 2 pi divided by 8 would be pi over 4x. Okay. This one starts at the middle and then goes up to the 4. So because it starts at the axis of wave, we know it's a sine. It went up first, so it's 4 sine. And it looks like it ends at 2 pi. That must be 4 pi, 6 pi, that's 8 pi. So it ends at 8 pi. So 2 pi over 8 pi would be 1/4x. Okay, this one right here starts at the negative 3. So negative 3 cosine, because start at the bottom. It goes to 4 pi, and 2 pi divided by 4 pi is 1/2 x. Okay, this one starts at the 0 and goes down to 2. So if it starts at 0, 0 and goes down, that's a negative sign. And it goes all the way until it gets to 4. So 2 pi over 4 is pi over 2x. Alright, k down here, it starts at the middle and then goes up to 3/4, so it's a positive 3/4 sine. And sine gets back to where it needs to be at 1. So 2 pi over 1 is 2 pi x. Alright, last one. So it starts at the minimum, so I know it's a negative cosine, so it's negative 5/2 cosine, and it ends at 2, so 2 pi over 2 is pi x. Okay? Alright, so it's really important when you're looking at the graphs to decide whether it's starting at the maximum point, the axis of wave, or the minimum. If it's starting at a maximum point, we're going to call it a cosine. If it's starting at the minimum point, it's a negative cosine. So this one started at the max, positive cosine. This one started at the minimum, negative cosine. If it starts in the middle and goes up, it's a positive sign. If it starts in the middle and goes down, it's a negative sign. But the last thing I'm going to do with you is I'm going to graph 4 by hand, because you'll have to be able to do this on your test. So the first one we're going to look at is negative tangent. We haven't done a tangent in a while. So let's remember that we're going to go out to 2 pi, and then we're going to half it, half it, half it. I go up to 1 and down to negative 1. And tangent's the one that has the pattern where it goes 0, asymptote, 0, asymptote, 0. And that pattern continued both directions. And positive tangent went right arm up, left arm down, but this is a negative tangent. So we're going to go left up, right down, left up, right down, left up, right down. Alright, the next one, y equals 3 sine of x. Before you graph it, you need to figure out your period. So remember your period is equal to 2 pi over b. My b right here is 1. So 2 pi over 1 is 2 pi. That means I need to go out to 2 pi, and I'm going to half it, half it, half it. And then you need your amplitude. My amplitude is 3. So from my axis of wave, which happens to be 0, I'm going to go up 3 and down 3. It's a positive sine curve, so it starts on the axis of wave and goes up, back to the axis, down to the minimum, and then back. And there's your 3 sine x. The next one is 2 cosine x minus 4. So again, we need to find the period first. So 2 pi divided by, my b is 1 again. It's 2 pi. This has an amplitude of 2, but this one actually has a k value of -4. And some of y'all had a really hard time graphing these on the assessment. So the first thing I'm going to do is go out to 2 pi, just like we talked about. Always go out as long as your period. I'm going to half it, half it, half it. And then you're going to graph the axis of wave next. And the axis of wave for this problem is -4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm going to go the amplitude above it and the amplitude below it. So 2 above -4 puts me at -2. That's my max. And 2 below -4 is going to put me at -6. And that's going to be my minimum. This is a positive cosine. So positive cosines start at the max. They hit the axis. They go down to the minimum, back to the axis, and back to the max. And the last one we're going to do, this one has a horizontal shift. So there's a b right here of 1 again. So the period, again, is 2 pi over 1, which is 2 pi. There's no number out front here. That means my amplitude is equal to 1. I'm not adding or subtracting anything, so my k is equal to 0. But my h, this time I'm going to do a shift, a phase shift to the right, and I'm going to start at pi. So let's see what this kind of graph would look like. So I'm going to go out to 2 pi, going to half it, half it, half it. My amplitude is 1, and my k is 0. So normally a sine curve would start right here at 0, 0. But I'm going to go pi units to the right. So instead of starting at 0, 0, I'm going to start at pi 0. And then I'm going to go up to my max, back to my axis, down to my minimum, and back to my axis. So I had to extend my graph a little bit out to 3 pi. Alright, so when you're studying for your test, remember how to find amplitude. It's always in front, but it's always a positive. Remember that to find your period, you have to find your b first, and that's going to be the number in front of x, and you do 2 pi divided by b. To write your equations, you need your amplitude and you need your b. If they give you the period, you have to know the formula, 2 pi divided by t. Remember, when you're doing phase shifts, you're going to do the opposite. If it says minus, you're going right. If it says plus, you're going left. And that's really about it. Study over any of your homeworks. Study your review sheet. Watch any videos that you need to rewatch. And good luck. Your test is on Wednesday.